Hello, and welcome back to the history of the Uyghurs. In the last video, we discussed how the Uyghurs, who were Buddhist and Manichaean nomads in Mongolia, ended up as Sunni Muslims in the Tarim Basin. We ended with the beginning of the rule of the Chagatai Khanate in the region. However, before we pick back up, I want to backtrack a bit and discuss the importance of the Karakhanids, who we only briefly mentioned in the last video. The Karakhanid Khanate was a Sunni Islamic state in Central Asia founded by the Karluks, whom you may recall as one of the Uyghurs' allies in their fight against the Gwek Turks. When absorbed into the Mongol Empire, the Karakhanids had a massive role in shaping the identity of the Chagatai Khanate, and therefore today's Uyghurs. The dominance of Sunni Islam is the most obvious connection. The modern Uyghur language descends from Chagatai, which itself comes from Karluk, which was spoken by the Karakhanids. But, as we also mentioned in the last video, this intermixing of cultures led to the disappearance of the name Uyghur from contemporary histories for quite some time. We do know that when the Chagatai Khanate split in the mid-14th century, the Uyghurs remained with the Mongol-ruled eastern portion known as Mogulistan. In the 16th century, the Uyghurs became part of the Yarkand Khanate, destroyed by the Dzungars in 1705. The Dzungars were Tibetan Buddhist Mongols from western Mongolia. After 1717, they even controlled Tibet. The Uyghurs were enslaved by the Dzungars and treated very cruelly. So it was no surprise that the Uyghurs often helped the Chinese Qing dynasty in its efforts to conquer the Dzungars. The Dzungar Khanate fell in 1755. For the next 3 years, the Chinese government committed the Dzungar genocide, killing more than 500,000 Dzungars. This was roughly 80% of the Dzungar population, and they never recovered. Following the genocide, the Uyghurs became by far the dominant ethnic group in Xinjiang, especially the Tarim Basin. The Qing dynasty allowed the existence of the Kumul Khanate, a semi-autonomous region for Uyghurs. Xinjiang province had not yet gained that name. The north of Xinjiang was called the Dzungar region or Dzungaria, while the Tarim Basin came to be known as the Muslim frontier. The Uyghurs themselves continued to be called Turks, Turki, Mussulman, Chanto, meaning turban head, Taranchi, meaning farmer, and pretty much anything except Uyghur. Arguably, a modern Uyghur identity had not even been formed yet. They were sometimes lumped in with the Hui, the other major Muslim group within China, though they are now considered separate. The Hui were the main force behind the First Dungan Revolt, which ravaged western China in the 1860s and 70s. The Qing dynasty nearly lost control of Xinjiang to the revolt. Yaqub Beg, an adventurer of Uzbek or Tajik descent, established himself as the leader of the revolt and proclaimed himself Emir of Kashgar. Both Britain and Russia, who were competing for influence in Central Asia at this time, recognized the Emirate of Kashgar. However, it seems religion was not enough to unify the various peoples populating Xinjiang. It is not clear what sort of role the Uyghurs played in the Dungan Revolt, but they were not the most active supporters of the Emirate. In 1877, the Qing dynasty defeated Yaqub Beg and soon drove out the Russians, who had occupied the north of Xinjiang. In 1884, the region was made into a province and officially given the name of Xinjiang, which means New Frontier. This name is considered insulting by many modern-day Uyghur nationalists who prefer the terms East Turkestan or Uyghurstan. In 1912, the Qing dynasty was overthrown by the Xinhai Revolution, and China soon plunged into the chaos of the warlord era. Xinjiang came under the control of the Xinjiang clique. As both Mongolia and Tibet broke away from China in the midst of this chaos, the Uyghurs, now starting to form a distinct modern identity, sought independence as well. During a 1921 Soviet-sponsored conference held in Tashkent, the non-nomadic Turkic Muslims of Xinjiang were renamed the Uyghurs. They traced their ancestry back to the old Uyghur Khaganate and, while acknowledging the differences between themselves and the old Uyghurs, took their name. The Soviet Union took advantage of Uyghur nationalism to push their own interests in Xinjiang. In 1930, China abolished the Kumul Khanate, sparking a major Uyghur rebellion, and the Soviets quickly intervened. There were 3 major players in the war, which lasted until 1934. The Uyghurs, who sought independence, the Soviet Union and the Xinjiang clique, who were allies, and the Chinese nationalist government, who wanted to secure stronger control over Xinjiang. In 1933, the Uyghurs established the Islamic Republic of East Turkestan, with the capital at Kashgar. This became the first Uyghur attempt at independence. Despite being an Islamic republic, East Turkestan ensured religious freedom. It also nationalized major industries and all underground resources. In 1934, East Turkestan was destroyed by the other two parties. The Soviets emerged victorious, securing a satellite in the Xinjiang clique under the leadership of Chagatai. The Chinese, hoping to regain control of Xinjiang, were quick to use the Uyghurs as their political pawns. In 1937, the Chinese government supported the Uyghur uprising against Soviet-controlled Xinjiang. However, the rebellion was unsuccessful and only resulted in the strengthening of Soviet power in the province. In 1941, Chiang Kai-shek betrayed the Soviets and pledged loyalty to China. This time, the Soviets used the Uyghurs as pawns to regain Xinjiang. In 1944, the Soviets sponsored the Ili Rebellion, during which the Uyghurs were able to establish the Republic of East Turkestan. The republic was based in Dzungar and was a Soviet satellite. The Chinese nationalists tried to regain this territory, but a ceasefire in 1946 seemingly secured the republic's continued existence. By 1949, though, it was clear that the communists were going to defeat the nationalists in the Chinese Civil War. This meant that, from the perspective of the Soviets, East Turkestan had outlived its purpose. East Turkestan was absorbed into Communist China by the end of the year. Beijing then encouraged the Han-Chinese migration into Xinjiang. In 1953, Xinjiang was 75% Uyghur and 6% Han. By the late 90s, Xinjiang's population was 40% Han-Chinese and only 45% Uyghur. Dzungar and the provincial capital of Urumqi have become majority Han, while the Uyghurs still dominate the Tarim Basin. China suppressed and still suppresses Uyghur religion and culture, which has galvanized the separatist movement to continue. The Uyghurs are also at an economic disadvantage compared to the Han Chinese, exacerbating the tension between the two ethnic groups. The tension reached a breaking point in summer of 2009. In late June, Uyghur factory workers in Shaoguan, Guangdong province were falsely accused of sexually assaulting a Han Chinese woman. 2 Uyghurs were killed by Han vigilantes and more than 100 were injured. This led to a peaceful protest in Urumqi on July 5th that quickly turned into a violent confrontation with police. The demonstration soon unraveled into a race riot during which nearly 200 people, mostly Han Chinese, ended up dead. Following this crisis, the conflict in Xinjiang quickly escalated. Knife-wielding assailants and suicide bombers have appeared in the name of East Turkestani independence. In 2017, Beijing began to take more extreme measures to control the ongoing conflict. It has increased surveillance in the province and set up so-called vocational education and training centers, in which 10% of all Uyghurs are estimated to be confined. But we'll discuss this topic in more detail in an upcoming video. So that ends my overview of the history of the Uyghur people, from Mongolia to the Tarim Basin to China. I hope you found that at least somewhat helpful and interesting. If you did, please consider liking and sharing this video. If you want to see more content like this, please also consider subscribing and turning on notifications. Thank you for watching.